There we go. Let's start with some love. Let me hear some claps. Let me get some love claps here. You see, this is how I ensure I get an ovation. I could ask you guys to stand up. It would be a standing ovation, but don't, please sit down. Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Reale, and thank you for your presence. I am the host of ESPN's Around the Horn, and I'm honored today to be the moderator for what I believe to be the most essential conversation in sports today. We call it winning at what cost? The mental health crisis facing today's student athletes. It's great to see you all out there. In my 20 years with ESPN, I've sensed a shift in how the public views athletes. Part of that is social media, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit in today's webinar. But I also sense a shift in how athletes view themselves, and maybe most importantly, how athletes should view themselves. So this is a conversation we're going to have today. In the professional ranks, I ask you to consider just the last year. We've seen some of the greatest athletes of all time. Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, Michael Phelps. Take time to say, pause. My mental health, all of our mental health is important, and I'm going to put it front facing. And it's been a courageous thing we've seen from our greatest athletes. But I want you to know right now, we've seen this at all levels. It exists at all levels, the collegiate level, the high school level, and in youth sports. And that's, I think, why we're all here today. We all know in sport, a healthy body is key. So something I want to say now, and no doubt should be echoed throughout everything we do today. Mental health is simply health. Again, mental health is health. We have a wonderful panel with us today. The timing of our gathering could not be more appropriate. This week is National Youth Sports Week. And so if we are to celebrate young people and their coaches and their schools and their communities, and we certainly should, let us also come together to raise awareness about the importance of athlete safety, wellness, and health. So my hope is you find this discussion to be engaging and useful in gaining a better understanding of the challenges our nation's youth and young student athletes face on the field and off the field, because we all could do better to support their well-being. Before we begin, and I introduce this wonderful panel to you, 3 quick housekeeping items. A TV host always has to give housekeeping items. Notice my house, by the way. This is Enzo and Francesca's desk behind me and their wonderful artwork. Please be advised, this information provided in this webinar is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice or treatment, nor is it intended to be relied upon as legal advice or counsel. This webinar is only for informational purposes. Also, we are happy to provide closed captioning services. Please click the link that was provided in the welcome message as you logged on today. This will be open in another window in your browser. You can follow today's presentation with live transcription. And finally, this webinar has been pre-recorded and will be made available at our respective websites and Facebook for the JED Foundation and the Positive Coaching Alliance. And with that now, I will introduce our wonderful panel. But just once more, I'm a host. I like to talk a lot. I'm not sure if you sense Tony likes to talk. Think back to your younger years for a second, when we were all in our youth sports career. Mine was hampered a little bit by a late growth spurt. I was 90 pounds, season 2 of Around the Horn, but I enjoyed it just the same. And I believe it was integral to who I am today as a person and a television host. So I ask you now to open yourself to a reality that the emerging generation find itself in. Sports available to all, and that is the most wonderful thing. Inclusion in sports available to all, the bettering of self, but also an ongoing and escalating teen and young adult mental health crisis, cultural pressures, global fears, injustice, social media, and of course, every young person's navigation through their identity. So when the high pressure world of youth sports meets that, the results we're finding can be troubling. We found out alarmingly, student athletes are experiencing exhaustion, anxiety, depression, and depression at increasing rates. During the early days of the pandemic, there was a worrisome increase in high school athlete suicides. And just this past spring, tragically, 5 high-profile college student athletes died by suicide in a span of 2 months. Last year, the suicide rate among 15 to 24-year-olds rose 7%. It's the largest increase of any age group. So now, more than ever, there is an increased urgency to provide young adults with mental health support. And that's why the JED Foundation and Positive Coaching Alliance are teaming up to offer concrete ways coaches, parents, caregivers, and players can safeguard the emotional well-being of high school athletes. And that is why we are here today. Thank you for being here. JED and Positive Coaching Alliance are founding members of the Choose Kindness Alliance, a group of 20 leading national nonprofits committed to the mission of the Choose Kindness Project. It's a year-long initiative, which is supported by ABC, and I can say proudly ESPN, and the Walton Family Foundation. And it's dedicated to inspiring a more inclusive world where all young people feel empowered to be themselves and be safe to create the futures they imagine. Because that's what we're talking about here. Young athletes today can be anything they want in the future. And that is a wonderful thing, but we need to prepare them to be their best self and to be their strongest self. We need to create a climate of care. So in today's webinar, we will share the most recent data of the youth mental health crisis and its impact on high school and college athletes. And we will discuss the academic, athletic, and emotional challenges students face, while offering real-life firsthand accounts of their struggles and present evidence-based solutions for individual and institutional improvements that could save the lives of these young students. And with that, now I finally welcome in our wonderful, esteemed panel. I'm sorry, I work on a show called Around the Horn with a mute button, and I'm the one who presses it and allows people to be muted. Somebody needs to mute Tony here. So, Dr. Laura Erickson-Schroep. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Laura. She's the Chief Medical Officer at the JED Foundation. Dr. Laura is a practicing psychiatrist committed to improving mental health through education and resource creation. They have provided thousands of patients with crisis intervention and mental health support at emergency rooms across New York City, with much of their career focused on supporting LGBTQIA+ youth. Thank you for being here, Dr. Laura. Let's get a little wave. I talk too much. Somebody needs to fill this space a little bit.
So glad to be here, Tony. Thank you for the welcome.
Mm-hmm. And Marty Reed is with us. Marty is the Director of National Partnerships and DEI Programming Manager for Positive Coaching Alliance. As a veteran PCA trader, Marty has delivered over 170 workshops for coaches, parents, athletes, and leaders since joining the PCA team in 2014. And one of the reasons why I'm most thrilled to have Marty with us today is she's done it all. Growing up in Long Beach, California, a 3-sport athlete competing in softball, volleyball, track, and field. She went on to play softball at UCLA and won a national championship with the Bruins. She's coached and trained athletes in elementary, high school, and collegiate levels. So with that, we say hello to Marty. And Marty, it's wonderful to have an elite athlete with us, while Dr. Laura and I can speak to a certain angle of this. Your time on the field is going to be key in this conversation. And we begin now. And I want to say this, mental health is not a dirty word. Mental health is health, right? Mental health is wellness. And National Youth Sports Week is a time to celebrate the young athletes. And what I think we love most about sports, Dr. Laura, teamwork, bettering of self, finding yourself. So as I bring you in here, I want to think about what we believe sports to be and know sports to be. And with that as a given, what do you believe are the benefits, mental health benefits of sports for young athletes?
Tony, first of all, I just want to say it's so great to be here with you and with Positive Coaching Alliance. We have a partnership with Positive Coaching Alliance, and we're creating resources together. We have resources for student athletes in high schools and colleges. And we also just recently put out a coach's guide to supporting high school athlete mental health. And we put together the JED Foundation and Positive Coaching Alliance. And I think this first question of yours is the super, super, super important one, because it's the one where we get to talk about, why are we doing this? Why do we want kids to play sports? I know I played sports as a kid, just like you. I didn't make it like on the elite college level, but I was in Little League and I was playing soccer and basketball, and it was so good for my mental health. So in terms of benefits, we know from research, and I talk about the youth that I work with. I talk with them about this, that physical activity of any kind, it doesn't need to be sports. It could be walking, it could be yoga, it could be dancing with your friends. Those actually are really great for your mental health. They boost mood, they decrease depression, and there's research studies to show this. And then in terms of sports, like you said, building community, a sense of belonging, right? Learning teamwork, learning leadership skills, practicing performing on a level where other people are going to be watching you is really helpful for other things in your life. And then there's a lot of challenges you have to navigate as a young athlete. You're going to be making mistakes. That's just part of the game. And you have to learn to cope with that, deal with that, move forward. And I want to talk a little about girls and young women in terms of sports. I mean, 50th anniversary, right? Of Type 9. That's huge. And Marty might have more to say about that too, but that's huge. 1972 changed the landscape, right? We know from research that for girls and young women, participating in sports helps to boost their grades, graduation rates, their self-confidence, their self-esteem, their body image, and decreases depression. So we have tons of research to show that. And so the more we can get girls participating in sports too, the better. And right now we still have a gap, right? We still have about 1 million high school athletes slots that we could fill in. That's how many more boys have opportunities to play sports than girls in the US, and we can do a lot more.
And we've seen that with the growth of professional leagues. The WNBA's ratings are going through the roof, viewership and fans. The National Women's Soccer League, of course, a high-profile league that is blossoming right before our eyes. Marty, I turn to you again because you're like a quadruple threat for us, right? I mean, you've done it, you played it, you've coached it, you've done it all. You have felt the benefits of sports and mental health benefits of sports yourself. Can you just give us a little glimpse of what it was like going through a high school and college career where someone as accomplished as yourself was getting all the good from sports?
Yeah, absolutely. I know from my experience that sports really helped me get out of my shell. I was a very shy and timid kid, but when I started playing organized sports, I started to be able to be a part of a group and feel a sense of identity. And it really had a large impact on my self-value and my belonging, being a part of a group, being able to build connections and relationships with my teammates, with my coaches, and with myself as well. I think those are some of the most positive things that we can get out of sports. And even Dr. Laura mentioned this as well. Some of the less obvious things would be those cognitive development skills and also that self-regulation, being able to learn how to focus and how to problem solve, make decisions quickly. And then when you have play and competition, it can also provide that opportunity for our youth to practice, managing stress in a positive way, right? Be able to learn how to fail and recover. That's probably the biggest life lesson that I still use today, that I learned from sports. And just having that manageable pattern of stress and learning those new skill sets and stepping out of my comfort zone and trying new things and seeing myself, succeed made me want to stick to the game longer and keep playing, right? So I think that's one of the most positive things that we can get out of sports. And now that I work with Positive Coaching Alliance, we always say that, there's no automatic that we're just going to learn these benefits from practicing sports. It's not just automatic. We have to make sure that sports are done right? When it's in a healthy environment and it's with positive and caring, adults, and making sure that that environment is teaching these life lessons and helping kids connect those dots and creating that safe space for you to receive these healing benefits that sports has to offer.
And that's one thing I'd like to echo, right? This conversation, as it should be, is focused on the young athlete. And we can listen to the young athlete, and we need to give them a voice, and they have to know they have a voice. But the infrastructure around that, what we do to steward them along the way, the climate of care is what we're going to talk about today. And that with our parents who are with us, our coaches who are with us, we know why you're here. You love these young people. We all do. You love sports. We have to be there for them on and off the field. And I say again, mental health, not a dirty word. Students today need to know, just like the muscles we're working out in the gym, just like the bodies that we're hoping are healthy and doing everything to remain healthy through a season, the mental health has to, and we're seeing it with our professional athletes. And some of the most significant stories of the past year, Michael Phelps, Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, as I alluded to before, they come at a time where a CDC report for 2021, it's just been published, so this is new data, shows that the suicide rate went up for teens and young adults ages 15 to 24. And this continues the worrisome trend over the last 2 decades. Additionally, 30% of high school students reported experiencing some form of anxiety and anxiety disorder. And most tragically, as we know, this very, very in need community has had multiple notable elite student athletes' deaths by suicide. So Dr. Laura, how do you consider that reality, those numbers, these trends, and what are some of the unique challenges that high school and college athletes are facing?
Yeah, I think to start off, Tony, there's so much going on for young people in general. So even if we're not thinking about just athletes, young people today are thinking about things that I don't think adults always realize are on their minds. And maybe you do if you have kids, because you can start to see the things that they ask about. But they know all the things that we know. They see news all the time in front of them, a million times a day. They're thinking about the political and social issues in our country. They're thinking about racial inequality, about wars around the world, existential issues like climate change. All these things are on their mind, and it's putting so much pressure on them. And so there's that. And then there's also the pandemic. So many young people lost in-person social interactions at a time in their lives when it's so important to be developing their identities and who they are as people. And you do that by interacting with other people. And so for athletes, that's their built-in sort of social network a lot of the time, their teams. And so they lost that at the same time that they were losing physically participating in sports. And then putting all of that aside, sort of what's going on right now, I think there are unique challenges for both high school and college athletes specifically. So number one, for all athletes, including high school athletes, I think there's an increase in pressure from adults to sort of push them to perform in a way that wasn't always true, decades ago, that it was a little bit more about sort of participation and community. And there's a lot of pressure now to perform. And there's also a lot of conflicts because of that pressure related to coaches' decisions, the roles on the team, where they are on the field, their playing time, that young people are navigating in ways that are sort of even more pressure filled than they used to be. And then a lot of high school athletes, especially if they're on a more elite level, are having to think about some of the things that college athletes used to have to think about. So specialization in sports, that has been increasing. So almost half of high school athletes are now specializing, which wasn't true in the past. And then there's recruitment going on earlier and earlier. So as early as sophomore year, young athletes are sometimes participating in recruitment processes, and it's not allowing them to be present in high school, participating in their high school experiences. And then when they move on to college, if they're participating, on an elite level and playing in college, it's taking up so much of their time, right?
Mhm.
So I know there are limits, right? I think it's, and Marty, you can tell me, I think it's 20 hours on season and 8 hours off season per week or something like that. But that's just on the playing field.
Right.
That, they're traveling to games, they're spending other time with their teammates, and it's adding up to 35, 40 hours a week. It's a lot of time. And they're not getting sleep that they need to get because of that, because they're trying to do school and participate in team sports at the same time. They're also not getting to spend enough time on other things in their lives besides sports. So they're not setting up communities outside of sports because they just don't have time to. And then you mentioned, Tony, visibility in social media. I mean, we're talking about young people who, it's really hard for them to see, for example, if they're very visible as an athlete in college, people posting negative things about them online and talking about their team and talking about them. That's really new. It used to be that you would just hear people at games booing you or things like that. And now it's like online for everyone to see. And one thing that's, always existed is injuries and forced retirement. That's always been a huge issue where sports is sort of your whole community and your whole life, and you run into an injury and it becomes really hard if you don't have the other things that you had. And then finally, I would say, like, for college athletes, for most people, there's an artificial ending to their careers, right? So most college athletes don't go on to play pro. And so this was a huge part of their lives, but then they don't have a next step. And so they kind of wonder, what's next for me? And a lot of people, that's like a big, big step going out into the world after they've had these kinds of communities.
Mhm. I want to put a bookmark in something you said, talking about time management, as we're going to maybe talk specifically to coaches and parents in a second. But to open it up to Marty, once again, asking you to put on your hat as an athlete. How did the pressures of being part of a team, part of a program, even at the highest levels, but even in high school, we talk about athletes, you have to power through, you have to be strong. Dr. Laura just mentioned there are injuries. Well, something ingrained, I think, in all of us is we got to be tough and no pain, no gain. Let's get through that. So I mean, it's a tough question to consider, Marty, but as you were a younger athlete, some of the things that you felt were particularly robbing of your mental health. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but things that challenged your own mental upkeep.
Yeah, I mean, wow, Dr. Laura, you mentioned so many things that I could relate to. I was just thinking back to my playing days, just managing all the responsibilities that, comes with being an elite athlete, from waking up to get to weights by 5:45 a.m. to be rolling out for 6 a.m. weights. And from there, then to practice at 8 a.m. and then to class, trying to stay awake in class, and then study hall, tutoring, and then starting all over again, trying to eat in between these things. Still till this day, I eat very fast and have to slow myself down because I'm so programmed to scarf food down really quickly. So just a lot of things that they're managing at once. And then we also talk about just the misconceptions that we have to overcome, the stigma that we have to overcome that we've created as a culture of what it means to be an athlete. You mentioned some of this, Tony, that sports teaches us we have to be tough. We have to not show weakness. We have to never admit if you're struggling in your pursuit of greatness, especially at an institution like UCLA, where sports and grades were there to win a national championship. That was the clear goal for everyone. And on one hand, there's so many moments where it feels so great to be a part of that culture of excellence, but it's a lot to uphold on a daily basis. And I think that a lot of times as athletes, we feel like we can't admit if we're going through something or struggling. Like, you got to act like it don't hurt when you get knocked down, but we're humans, we're not machines, right? It hurts when you get knocked down. And I feel like true resilience doesn't mean that you never feel defeated or discouraged. It's not about hiding that pain or pretending that everything's all good. We have to break that stigma and be able to acknowledge the pain so we can get back up, right? So we can ask for help, so we can begin to heal. So I think those are things that I didn't really recognize when I was playing in my days. I know that I struggled with anxiety. I didn't call it that back then, but it had a lot to do with performance pressure. I was a walk-on recruited athlete, so I was constantly in two spots, either sitting the bench, fighting for a starting spot on the team, or starting on the team and fighting to stay there. So it was a constant struggle that I had to overcome thoughts of like, man, am I good enough? Do I belong? Just constantly in my head. And I didn't know that I was battling anxiety at the time. So I think nowadays we are talking more about this publicly. So there are resources that are more readily available to seek. But when I was playing, I don't think it was a culture of understanding that it's okay to, be a bit stressed out and admit that, I need a bit of time just to take a moment to recenter myself.
Mm-hmm. You now coach, and I want to speak to coaches now, because we talked about one example of athletes. There's going to be injuries and you fight through your injuries because you're strong. Okay. Here's another example. It's important for coaches always to stress team. We know this. The team is of utmost importance. And one of the things young athletes are navigating now is, when is it about team and when is it about me? And do I put myself above the team in this instance here? Is that being selfish? I'm thinking of a place here where an athlete's own person has to take a back seat to the team and the challenges that has on an athlete. So as a coach, Marty, and this is a question for all coaches who are watching here, school athletic directors, members of the coaching staff, if you were to sense a student is struggling, perhaps even in silence, your students, your athletes, but maybe they're not even communicating they're struggling, what should you do? How do you spot an athlete experiencing the challenges of mental health? How can you connect them to help that may be life-saving? Marty.
Yeah, so I think it's important to really build connections with each of your athletes individually. As a coach, you can understand where they may be showing some signs that are unusual to their normal behavior. They're disconnecting and not engaging, or you see them acting a little different than normal. I think it's important as a coach to be able to have that communication line openly to your athletes. And I think speaking to them in private is best, because you don't want to bombard them in front of the team or make anyone feel, that pressure, in front of everyone else. So maybe pulling them to the side so we don't make them uncomfortable, and then starting that conversation from a place of concern and a place of support and love. Hey, you seem a little down lately, and I wanted to know, I wanted you to know that I'm here for you. And wanted to know, is there anything you want to talk about? I think being specific in your concern also can help. It worried me a little bit when you said XYZ. Can you tell me what you meant by that? Things like that I think are important. And listening to understand without judgment is very important, not making assumptions, hearing them, repeating back what they said to them, and letting them know that they're not alone. It's okay to have those feelings. So validating them is very important, and showing that empathy. I always say empathy doesn't mean you have to connect directly to what they're going through, because you might never be able to understand it from an embodiment standpoint. Like say if I'm being coached by a white male, he might not understand some of the things that I'm going through as a Black female, but you can connect to the feelings and emotions behind it. So listening for those things and what actions I'm taking, and try to connect on that level. And I think that's important for coaches to recognize and be able to have that communication.
That's incredibly well said, Marty. The old expression, walk a mile in a person's shoes. It may ring true to you, but consider it this way. You don't have to be in a person's shoes to be there for somebody, to listen to somebody. Don't walk a mile in their shoes. Ask them how the walk was. Dr. Laura, when you're considering what a coach, the position they're in, win the game, win the championship, put the best team you could possibly put out there, practice, lift, be, everything on the table, and then also having to navigate this. This is real. Are there any tools that the JED Foundation, Positive Coaching Alliance, can pass forward to coaches? I'll start with Dr. Laura there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I want to say I really like how Marty dug into the idea of this sort of expectation to be strong. And I think that expands to coaches and people around young people as well. And I think that's sort of what you're getting at, Tony. Like, I'm supposed to win championships. I'm supposed to, run this team. I'm supposed to be strong too. I think that we're talking about a really important culture shift that we need to see. And we're starting to see it already, where coaches are starting to model and normalize the kinds of behaviors and approaches that Marty's talking about. So, having conversations with young people in front of other young people as a team, talking about the fact that they often, will struggle themselves with emotional issues. And it was hard for them when they were playing sports. And these were the pressures that they felt, demonstrating their own coping skills. Here are the things that I do when I have a hard time. And so I think if we're in, and like Marty said, you have to sort of dig in with young people, especially in sports, who feel like they have this pressure to perform and to succeed and to always be strong. And I think what you said about being specific with young people on sports teams especially is super important, because a lot of young people, whether they're athletes or not, you ask and they'll say, I'm fine. Everything's fine. That's the teenage way, right? But digging in with them and saying, like, I actually noticed something really specific about you that was going on. And if you've set the precedent and you're a model in your own behavior, and you've shown them that you deal with things too, and you have emotions, and you can, you have coping skills, then you're able to offer that space that Marty was talking about, where a young person can be open. And if they don't want to talk right now, you can say, okay, I'll check in with you in a few days or a week. I'm happy to, keep having those conversations. Also, coaches need to learn the resources beforehand, right? So not only be models, but they need to be ready for this to happen. You don't want to wait till one of your athletes is struggling to go connect with other people in the counseling center or to look up local resources. You want to be connecting with the other people at your school. Often at colleges, there are whole sort of departments built around supporting the athletes. There's primary care, there's often mental health services that are specific for the athletes. And in high schools, as a coach, you want to connect with the counseling center. You want to find out about local resources. Maybe if you have queer and trans athletes, there's an LGBTQ resource locally, those kinds of things. And then one last thing is, you don't want to forget to ask for help for yourself, right? So you're a coach, you're not a therapist. And so you may not know all of the answers, and that's okay. You don't have to figure everything out, right? You have all these resources around you that you can go to for help, for support for you, and also for finding extra help and resources for young people.
And I think it's important to be realistic about that, what you just said. This may require an evolution in what the role of coaching is. I'm going to be completely honest. I've spent the last month of Around the Horn on ESPN talking about scandals in leagues where coaches have been taking advantage of players. The entire youth soccer program is under a spotlight right now. We've seen it in the National Women's Soccer League. And this is not to blame coaches. This is to acknowledge a way and pattern of coaching that has existed in the past. We have to recognize is not the way to go forward. So, Marty, being realistic of the challenges here, that many millions of today's young athletes might be needing of help. They might recognize it, but they might not recognize it. This is when I want to invoke the culture of care. So this is from a parent's perspective too, Marty. What can caring adults do to help protect and strengthen the emotional health of young people to prevent, and let's put words to it, okay? Substance abuse, self-harm, suicide. Let's not let those words thrive in silence. Let's put voice to it. What can caring adults do to strengthen the emotional health of people around, Marty Reed?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that we talk about at Positive Coaching Alliance is filling the emotional tank. We all have an emotional tank, and when that tank is empty, we feel low, we feel down. We do have those, we can easily start to have those thoughts of, am I worth it? Do I belong here? What am I? Who am I? We can really start to self-evaluate, and it can get into a dark place. So we talk about relentlessly filling the emotional tank. And helping athletes by constantly sharing gratitude, letting them know that you care, letting them know that, you appreciate them, giving them truthful, specific praise, I think goes a long way, not just blowing smoke, letting them know the specific things that you're proud of them for, and strengthening that relationship, I think is key, and creating that individual connection with each athlete. So that's for the coach, that's for parents as well, and understand who they are outside of their sport. Don't just constantly talk to them about their sport all the time, right? We want to show appreciation and care and remove all doubt that they have your support and that they matter regardless of their performance out there on the playing field or in school, right? And I think when it comes to sports, parents and coaches have to stop overemphasizing results and winning. Instead, they should be focusing on the process over outcomes. We talk about creating an environment where effort is more important than, results. We want them to value effort more than results, which can help athletes, focus on the things that they can control. And when they focus on the things they can control, their anxiety is going to go down, their self-confidence is going to go up. So those are just some little ways that instantly coaches and parents can start building that environment of care where they feel seen, where they feel heard, and where you feel valued.
Dr. Laura, a family, parents come to you and they are concerned about the emotional health of their young child. How do you begin to open up a conversation and dialogue with them?
Yeah, I think, it's a lot of the things that Marty said. So coaches and parents are in slightly different positions, but not that different, right? So I think it's, again, being a role model, showing your own emotions as a parent in front of your children, making sure they know that you deal with things and that you have coping skills that you've developed, and show them, as you utilize those. Talk openly with your children about what they are dealing with and what you are dealing with. Make, for either for coaches or parents, make the space that young people are in a space that's, free from bullying, that supports all young people. Make it clear that you're not going to accept any of those kinds of things in your home or on the, in your practices or on the playing field. Help young people to connect to other people. So for parents, this is, are you connecting to your teammates? Do you feel like you're part of this? And also, do you have things outside of sports? So encourage them to do things that are not, part of the sport that they're playing most of the time. Again, like Marty said, focusing on hard work and effort and improvement, because those are the things that are going to help that young person. Most people don't go on to become elite athletes or pro athletes. And even if you do, you need all of those things. As a pro athlete, I can't imagine how much pressure you're under and how much you're going to need to be able to roll with mistakes and have difficulties and challenges and still move forward. So you need all those things. Like, you need to be able to frame your mistakes as opportunities to grow. And so parents can help young people to do that and see those things and say, look, yeah, I know that was really hard, but life is very challenging and I'm going to help you navigate it and you can do this. And then let them be seen as full people, right? Like let young people know that sports are part of their lives, but they're not all of their lives. They're something that they do, but it's not who they are.
Mm-hmm. And that's so challenging because in sometimes in a young mind, everything is everything, right? At one moment is everything in the world. And this is maturity, and this is why at Climate, this is why the infrastructure around the student is so important. The JED Foundation and Positive Coaching Alliance titled this webinar, Winning at What Cost? And it's a truly difficult question. It's provocative. It goes right to something we all feel as former athletes, current athletes, coaches. You know, I want to win. I want to do it. I want to, and that should still be a goal. The goal can be to win. But while acknowledging that, creating the climate around and staying true to the competition of sport, Marty, I'm wondering, you've said that many colleges have programs now for mental health, or colleges have their own department. Is this something you see in high school sports? Can high school sports open this up to young, to get to the point where we can win, but not at all costs?
Absolutely, 100%. I know that PCA and the JED Foundation is out here putting resources out to help youth athletes, high school and below as well, to really focus on that effort and grow as a holistic athlete, and not just, focus in that area of results and have to win, right? We want to make sure that the experience is fun, and a place where young people can learn and grow and become their best selves. And we've mentioned it many times here that, it's not an automatic that they're going to play at the next level or continue their career in sports, but there's so many benefits that they can get out of it, if we make sure that we're focusing on, learning those life lessons, becoming the best version of themselves, and not just emphasizing winning. Trust me, I love to win. I love to compete. I love to, get out there and be the first one. And that's all fine, but I have to make sure that I'm detaching myself and my value, my self-worth from those results. And it would so much help if the caring adults in my life were vulnerable and shared when they were going through something. Like Dr. Laura mentioned multiple times, that vulnerability really helps us realize how human we are and that it's okay, and validating our experiences so we can detach ourselves from the pressure and from the results. And we can bounce back after we're making mistakes and not say that I am a mistake. No, I just got a result that I didn't like in this moment, and I can get a different result next time. So having a shift in that mindset and a shift in the culture can really start at a young age if we continue to put these resources out and coaches are trained. We have a course called Coaching with Empathy. We have another course, Double Goal Coaching for winning and competing, but the more important goal of teaching life lessons through sports. And we want to make sure that coaches are trained and they have the resources to be able to set that tone in that environment for athletes to thrive.
Positive Coaching Alliance's website and JED's website will have all the background, of course, on Marty Reed and Dr. Laura, but also information to get you to those resources Marty was just explicitly speaking to. And Dr. Laura, on winning at what cost and what you see the future of mental health and youth sports to be.
Yeah, I think I see so much potential, right? I think that we're thinking on much more systems levels than we ever did before. There have always been wonderful adults in young people's lives, parents, teachers, coaches that really care about young people, but they haven't had the words or the resources or the opportunities to do that on a systems level. And I think we can. So I think, coaches are spending more time making mental health a priority. Talking about it, having conversations within their departments, either on a high school or a college level, making connections, forming collaborations between athletic departments and counseling departments within schools, implementing comprehensive plans for how they're going to approach these kinds of issues. That's one thing that JED specializes in. We have a program called JED Campus and a program called JED High School, where we work directly with high schools and colleges, and we help them to assess and improve their mental health and suicide prevention programs on campus. And so we help them to think in a comprehensive, large scale, systematic way about the things that they're doing on their campuses, things like training staff to have conversations and provide resources to young people, thinking about the makeup of their staff, representing demographically your students, those kinds of things. And we help them to think collaboratively and on large scale and systems level ways about this. I'm really excited to see that happening.
To me, it comes down to a word: encourage. It's encouraging young students and encouraging even your fellow peers as coaches, because encouragement is a base of love, but it takes that word courage to change maybe the way a coaching profession has been for quite some time. But you can't spell encourage or courage without O-U-R in the middle, those three letters, our. Dr. Laura Erickson-Schroth, Marty Reed, thank you so much for joining us today. I think the challenges we're all facing can feel overwhelming and stressful at times, but after hearing from you guys, I know even as a broadcaster, as a member of the media, the recognition I have in how we report stories concerning mental health has to evolve. So one last thing I would leave you with. Mental health, not a dirty word. Mental health is health, but mental health does not discriminate. It can affect a champion, a GOAT, the greatest of all time, or a newcomer, high school freshman. So let's not let the way mental health is talked about discriminate either. Pain, crises, thrives in silence. So let's take the lead of these voices, Dr. Laura and Marty, and the voices we heard today, and live our mental wellness out loud and allow our young athletes know it's okay to not be okay.
I love that, Tony.
Thank you very much, Doctor. This concludes today's webinar, Winning at What Cost? The Mental Health Crises Facing Today's Student Athletes. Thank you again to Dr. Laura, to Marty, to Positive Coaching Alliance for platforming this webinar, and to the Choose Kindness Project and ESPN and the JED Foundation. Everybody show some love. Let's stand up. A standing ovation. Sit down, please. Have a beautiful day.